The illusion of fear arises with the illusion of the ego. The ego is like a tooth, and the nerve within it is fear. And that fear is there because the ego arises as the object of an other upon whom the life of the organism depends. And this creates the fear of abandonment, rejection, and antagonism, enmity. And so these become the standing waves of thought forms that repeat and aggregate other forms of thought to crystallize around them, along with the desire to mimetically please that other, and then all of the others that one becomes dependent upon in time, or to manipulate, to control, to intimidate, or to placate, or to evade, whatever is the strategy of the persona that forms as a buffer between the ego and the other. But all of this artificial mentation then obscures the nature of the self to itself. The ego forms to obscure its feelings from the other because the ego doesn't want the other to know of its own fear, anger, hatred, fury, because of the fear of the backlash. And so the ego's deepest thoughts become repressed into the subconscious. But they are constantly erupting to destabilize the persona's attempt to remain in a state of equanimity. It cannot do it because it is always buffered by the fear that it will be harmed, insulted, rejected, and made fun of, and otherwise belittled and shamed. And so that original shame signifier that comes from the neediness in relation to the other that caused one to alienate one's consciousness from oneself in order to please the other, to be like the other, to be the desire of the other, created a sense of self-betrayal. And the self-betrayal then is projected as a fear of betrayal of the other. And so the ego is burdened with this complex of a tremendous brew of anger, of terror, of confusion as to who it is or what life is about, and can never find its true center because it has fragmented itself into a persona, defenses, calculating mind that tries to strategize how to cope with things, repressed subconscious. It doesn't know who it is. And it has censored the connection between all of these fragments so that it doesn't have to know its own unbearable feelings. So when you begin the process of examining your mind, all of this comes up, and one faces that unbearable energy. And the only way that one can cope with the forbidden and unbearable knowledge that arises when one truly wants to know who one is and what is real is to recognize that one's consciousness is not identical with the self-image that has become the ego's way of conceiving of itself. An image that enabled it to negotiate its relationships with the other, but which is not authentic. It is usually chameleon-like in order to be able to change in accord with the different projections of different people. And so it has no true nature. And when one wants to find out what is true, what is real, what is authentic within this consciousness, one has to penetrate so deeply into the self that one reaches that place that has no identity. That place that was in the core of one's awareness before the ego was formed, and is actually the place where the ego resides. When that is realized, the consciousness understands that it was never born. It is not identified with the body. And all of the traits and all of the complexes that were built up upon the belief that you were born, the belief that you're that body, the belief that you're the thinking mind that is the operating system created to protect the body. All of that is a fabricated illusion built on the foundation of pure awareness that is empty and that is boundless. And when you explore that consciousness that was present prior to the ego and the contraction of the mind around a few signifiers, beginning with that of shame and then that of guilt and that of fury and that of all of the other emotional reactions one has to the other's failure to love and connect with you. Once you reach that, you realize your consciousness is not particular to the body, that it's actually cosmic consciousness. It's without limits. And it's even beyond cosmic because it's consciousness that's prior even to the world. It's absolute. And when you have the courage to leave behind the grounding in the ego that tells you who you are, if you're willing to not know who you are, you will realize that the ego never was who you are, but an illusion, and that the not knowing is the being. It's the not knowing and the radical acceptance of not being able to grasp with thought who you are, because who you are is greater than the mind's thinking intelligence to be able to comprehend.